beings, y'all. Let's get it.
Put your hands together. Put your hands together.
Yeah. Welcome back to Calling All Beings, man. Party people, my name is DJ San Marco. I'm your host, along with my co-host at A Waif Soul, also
What's up, y'all?
known as Nathan. And we have a special guest for you again tonight, the UFO OG, the legend, Texas owned party people. Put your hands together for UFO Jane.
Yes.
Woo!
That's awesome. That might be my most favorite intro ever.
Yes. Yes.
Doing it right.
UFO Jane. I just want to sing a song for you, girlfriend. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome now. Yeah, the OG for sure, because it's not UAP Jane. That's what I always say, and it never will be. So that's proof I was here. I've been around for a little while, before it was popular,
Absolutely.
Exactly. Talking to fools like me who just come around thinking you're in the conversation. You nothing. You just got on the block.
Well, hey, the thing is that I have to, we all have our own, little things, and so I'm just gonna, I'm gonna be the old folk, on the block. That's my thing, right? So I'm gonna, you guys don't know about, about the all
Back
the
in my day
history and stuff, right?
Have you back in my day somebody yet? Because you
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm just Janie
it's become
from
like
the
that
block.
lately.
Right? I'm just Janie from the block. First,
Right,
I got
exactly.
little,
I haven't changed.
Now I got a lot. Yeah.
Or I have a similar amount, but but I've been able to, report on UFOs the whole time. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Can I get an
can't
amen
complain
for the
about that.
Yes, amen.
Yeah.
So as you can see, my thing is acting like a fool. I'm actually quite adept at it. I've had a lot of practice. But no, all kidding aside, I'm going to get serious now. I want you guys to know this is a serious UFO program.
So serious.
And that just shows it. I proved it right there. Stop.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
sweet.
Yeah, one thing you need to know about our show, Jane, is that on our show, I'm the latte and DJ is the pumpkin spice. So that's just how it works around
awesome.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have a balance.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
do get serious, though. Nathan, did I get serious when we were talking about Rather's boy, Mickey West?
Oh, man.
Did I get
super
real?
Too serious.
Not too serious. No, I mean, I can be serious, but I think there's an appropriate time for everything.
Absolutely.
And there is no topic that I could talk about that I wouldn't want to include some level of levity. Otherwise, why am I doing it? I might as well go cut the grass.
Exactly.
I don't have grass. But anyway, UFO Jane, it's a pleasure to have you, ma'am.
Yes, an honor.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, it is an honor to have you. There are so many topics that are going on. An Anjali update, Ross Coulthard's interview. Nathan, I guarantee, is super duper prepared. And I'm gonna kind of go.
I don't know that I am. You guys might have to fill me in on some of the news, but I'll react.
You know what? I suspect where Nathan's going to want to go, and he's going to say this more intelligently than I would. But can you sort of take us, how you became involved and what made you become, shall we say, enraptured with this topic?
Yeah. So I did not see anything growing up. I didn't really think about aliens being a real thing growing up. Just watched movies. I was a really curious kid though. So I do remember always thinking outside the box and feeling a little bit different and kind of lost in my own brain a lot growing up. So it's kind of now thinking back, I'm like, why didn't I get to the alien theory growing up? So what happened though, I had a journalism degree from UT Austin, here nearby, and I was blogging, about movie reviews and fashion and all those safe to write about things. And I met a guy, we started dating, and he was the one who introduced me to UFOs. I mean, obviously I knew what a UFO was, but it was just that word to me. It was this blank part of the cosmos, I guess. And so, so once he introduced me to everything, I mean, I think just like anybody who's into this field knows, is once you discover that all of this is real, you can't really undiscover that. And so, I mean, I had a skill set. I liked writing, and it's like, how do you go blogging about like celebrity fashion trends when UFOs are showing up in your own home state? And none of the local, I mean, there's definitely been some local coverage for sure. There's different journalists, for example, that will regularly reach out to me when there's a sighting. So it's not that it's a total blackout, but I mean, pretty much there was no reporting going on of UFOs that were being seen here in Texas all the time. And so I just kind of started organically reporting on it, looking at Twitter, looking at YouTube, MUFON, National UFO Reporting Outlet, all that, and archiving it and documenting it on the web. And eventually people then started to reach out to me with their own sightings. And so it started to just snowball, into what it is today. So that's, that's pretty much how I'm here.
Incredible. I mean, that has to be like quite a journey from kind of just getting into it and then just watching it grow and grow and grow. I mean, what was it like for you when, you're just sitting around one day in 2017 and this article hits the New York Times, and were you kind of like, finally, like more people are paying attention, or, what was the reaction that you had there?
Oh yeah, it was a super big deal. And I can't say it was unanticipated though. So I wouldn't have gotten into this if we didn't think, like my family, and didn't think that this was going to end up somewhere. So it was very clear to me, and the guy I dated who turned into my husband, it's very clear to me that the UFO phenomenon was real, that it was being covered up, and that we had been going through this process for a long time as humans, probably even before Roswell. So that was clear. And so the only inevitable conclusion you come to is that, well, the truth is going to come out. There's nothing really new under the sun, right? And this will be a news story, and this probably a political news story, probably a divisive news story. And so I kind of thought, as a mom, I was like, well, should I even report on something that clearly the government doesn't want me to report on? I mean, I remember sometimes looking at IP addresses, and it was like the Defense Department early on, and I would get real spooked out, about stuff like that. Later I remember going through some, like, not WikiLeaks, but maybe something from WikiLeaks, and reading some email chatter discussing, different triangle UFOs, and that's one of the main things, I've been reporting on all these years. And so it's kind of this weird thing where I'm reporting on this thing that's fake to most people, and is on the fringe, but I could kind of live in that anonymous world a bit. But knowing that would be over, and so I just knew there was a limited window to research and learn and educate myself and educate others. And for me, even though, my hunch is that aliens are out there and are visiting, my goal really isn't so much to convince anybody to believe a particular thing, but just to get them to think for themselves, be educated, but really more than anything, just not freak out when this becomes a major news story.
And that's something you really can't control, because it's really going to be based on how they grew up, what their belief system is. Because what's interesting, harking back to something you said a little earlier, is that once you learned about it, you said, how could you not know about it and want to find out the truth and study more? But yet you'll encounter people like Alex Dietrich and Dave Fravor and others that have encountered it, that are aware of it, and they're not really interested in studying it. So it means like there's a group of us, but not everybody is as
Alex Dietrich. It's interesting though about Alex Dietrich, because she says that. But you see her by the way, and I never got it. It didn't work out. I think Afghanistan happened right when I was about to interview her, so it just didn't work out. And she's consumed with much more important things. But she says that. But then she's she shows up on UFO Twitter constantly.
Right.
And she's posting UFO books and art. And okay, so then what's going on here? Is she just pretending like she's not into this? She just enjoys the community. Why would she enjoy the community if she's not into it? So that's
interesting. Interesting.
I wonder if Fravor and Dietrich, and what's interesting is I talked to Gary Voorhees, who's the other TikTok UFO witness, who's like total contrast
right
to those two, just super down the rabbit hole like us. I'm wondering what briefings they have had or not had, or what they're predicting for the future, because I think they know that it's okay to invest in this and to participate in this. Because if I think that they weren't interested and they didn't think that this was ETs, they would not be talking about it.
Yeah. That's a good assessment.
Now, Fravor, I think, is more from, I've not watched a ton of interviews with them, but in my interview with Gary Voorhees, he's talking about how pilots have their own compartmentalizations and things that they know and don't know, and their own worlds. And then, those on the ship, I guess, have their own world. And so there's a little bit of a separation. And I hate to say this because I don't mean no disrespect to anybody who served, because especially somebody like me who's just really a chicken and just needs people to protect me. So I mean no disrespect. I appreciate everybody's service. But I do think with disclosure coming, we do have to confront that whether or not you're in the military, it doesn't make you the be all know all of whether something happened or whether aliens are real. And you have to accept that whatever your briefings are going to be limited, and wherever you are in the chain, you have to accept that there's other people that are going to get different information than you. And I think could potentially be a lot of insecurity and maybe even jealousy and competition between different groups. And I think that can contribute to UFO denial, because if you're in the military and you see UFO and they're telling you it's a weather balloon, or they're telling you it's their own military craft, you might want to believe that, because you don't want to believe that you're being lied to and that some other person in the military they trust more to give that information. And as I understand it, the Tic Tac, those UFOs, before Fravor saw at least one, those were being tracked already before, and they were anticipated, and him and Alex Dietrich were not looped into that. So I think when we think about why people don't want to talk about things, it may not be because they're just not naturally as curious. I think I just don't know that I've met a human being yet who have talked about this who isn't naturally curious about it. I do meet people who are afraid to talk about it or embarrassed or things like that.
Yeah. I could tell you there's no way that I would have talked about it when I was flying, because as I think I said on when I was on UCR with you, that they would have said, hey, you need to go see the flight doc. And by the way, you're off the flying schedule. But I actually, with regard to pilots, because I'm a civilian pilot, I was not a military pilot, but I flew with military pilots. And I'm going to have on one who's not familiar with the topic. And we had an hour and a half conversation about this. His name's Troy Broskowitz. He was Air Force Special Operations Command pilot. Someone highly skilled. He actually was my classmate going through high school, through flight school. We're going to have him on with Chris Lato, and we're actually going to try to get another pilot on to kind of dig into that world. And I can just tell you, they don't know anything more that you know. The only area of expertise they have that nobody else has is when they see something in the air, they know what they're looking at and what they're not looking at.
Right. Totally.
And people on UFO Twitter that include Mick West think that they know what they're looking at and what the systems are capable of and what the craft is capable of, and they don't. That's the only thing that they have that is different than everybody else. I see this, I'm trained, I know what I'm looking at, and that's the extent of it. But as far as what you said, the broader knowledge of what's out there, or if they're they don't know anything more than anybody else, than the researchers know that have spent years on this.
Yeah. Well, and I think it speaks to